Hello everyone, welcome to this sixth lesson of Dutch Society 1. My name is Mark Bos and I will be teaching you these two topics. It's called Multiculturalism and Dutch Law. As you will see, the way it has been described in the book, they are very closely related, these two topics. I will go through the slides and explain a little more with each slide. And in the meantime, I will ask you a few questions to reflect on. You can take some time for that, write some things down for yourself. And these questions that I ask will also help you to prepare for the exam. So it's wise to do that. All right, let me start. The first thing we can say about these two topics is that in a way they are both about tolerance. The question that I would pose as the theme for this lecture will therefore also be, are we tolerant? And tolerance I understand in the following way: the capacity for or the practice of recognizing and respecting the beliefs or practices of others. Yeah, so tolerance is about respecting the fact, recognizing and respecting the fact that other people have other beliefs and other habits. We all have different lives, we all have different beliefs, and tolerance means that we respect that and we let that happen, we make it happen. Now, if you would have asked the Dutch 10 years ago, most of them would have probably said that they were proud of being tolerant. Maybe a little longer ago, 15 years, 20 years ago, the Dutch were famous for their tolerance. The question now is that still the case? In a way, of course, we are a tolerant people. We have a few very liberal ideas and very liberal laws, as you will see later on in this lecture. But on the other hand, things have also started changing. Of course, especially since 9/11 and certain other dramatic events that we have all encountered over the past few years. But I'll get into that later. The first thing I want you to do is reflect a little bit on your own country. Whether you're from Turkey, China, or Ireland, or Poland, or Austria, or maybe even Belgium, which is very close to the Netherlands. Think about, do you believe that your country is tolerant? Is your tolerant, open-minded, and respecting towards people with different beliefs, different religions, different practices, different sexuality, etc., etc.? Do you think so? Why? And why not? Maybe you can find reasons for, yes, my country is tolerant in a way, or you can find reasons for not. It can both be. So maybe you think, yes, on the one hand, my country is tolerant towards certain things, but on the other hand, not at all. Think about that. And you can think about laws, but you can, of course, also think about culture. How do people think? Are people in general open-minded towards foreigners, or are they general closed-minded? You can pause the presentation now and think about that and write a few things down. And if you've written it down, press pause again and continue the video. Now, chapter 17 gives us a brief overview of the history of Dutch multicultural society. And as of now, 1 in 5 of the people in the Netherlands is of an immigrant background. So that means 20%. 11% out of the 100% is born elsewhere. So 20% has an immigrant background. That means 9% has parents that were born elsewhere. But of the whole population, 11% were born elsewhere. Mainly people from Turkey, Morocco, and Suriname. Suriname was, as you might know, a former colony of the Netherlands, and many people there had the Dutch nationality and speak Dutch as well. So it was, for many of them, it was very easy and it made sense to come here. People from Turkey and Morocco especially came here as guest workers after World War II. Also people from Indonesia. And they came here to help us rebuild the country. We needed a lot of hands to rebuild the country after the destruction of World War II. So that was the reason why many of them came. And of course, many of them stayed here for a few years and wanted their families to join them as well. So family reunion was a big reason for the immigrant population to grow. Now, after that, many more people have started coming for various reasons, as we all know. Some for economic reasons, some for political reasons, some for religious reasons. And this has been like that for many, many years. It's not a new phenomenon, of course. Even in 1700 and even before that in the Netherlands, we had many people from abroad, mainly because of trade or refugees. But this is just the most recent history. And as of now, Amsterdam has about 170 nationalities. So not that means that in the Netherlands as well, but most of them are, of course, located in the big cities: Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague, Utrecht. And especially Amsterdam has the highest number. That's why I wanted to point that out. Now the policies have also changed. In the beginning, people just came here for work, and there were not very many policies. We didn't really think about, the Netherlands didn't think much about what it could mean that people with different religions, different backgrounds would come here. We assumed things would work out. So we also thought that the residence was temporary. They would just come here to work, and then they would just probably want to go back to their own countries. So we thought it would be temporary. The Netherlands thought it would be temporary. So there were no special integration measures. And in a way you could say that we were living apart together. So we were living in the same country, but we did not really mingle very much. People were living in their own subcultures. The Turkish people were living together. The Moroccan people were living together. Not 100%, of course, but in general. Now things, as we found out that people settled down here, people started to make a living in the Netherlands, and not all of them wanted to go back to their own country. They had settled down here, they had learned the language a little bit, they had good jobs, so they didn't see much reason to go back. They wanted to stay. So now the government had to think about, okay, what do we do with this? Do we need to make some policies for this? Also, because there were some issues, some problems started to come up. We found out that the Turkish people and the Moroccan people, they each had a different issues with Dutch society, in the sense that education-wise, the children were sometimes lagging behind. They didn't get good jobs. They were lagging behind with language. The criminal rates were higher amongst the people with different backgrounds. So all this made the politicians question, okay, maybe we need to do something about this. Now, at those times, the policies were fairly liberal. You could say it was tolerant, it was liberal. It was focused on emancipation and at the same time preserving your own cultural identity. So we believed, the policies believed, that people have the right to their own culture. People have the right to their own beliefs, and they should remain themselves as much as possible. But we should try to help them to emancipate, to give them more education, to give them special rights, etc., so they can come up in society, they can get better education and better jobs and get forward in life. So this was, in a sense, an emancipation policy. And it was done by the line of the identity of ethnic minorities. Now, what does that mean? They said that we need to focus on what is particularly What is particular, what is special about the Turkish people? What is special about the Moroccan people and the Surinamese people? And what do they need? So people were actually put in boxes. Turkish, Moroccans, Surinamese. Now, and the book says that because of this policy, we still in Holland think like that. We still think of Dutch people, Moroccan people, Turkish people, etc. Turkish people with a Turkish background or people with a Moroccan background are generally not called Dutch people. They are seen as Turkish people or Moroccan people. So that was actually the downside of that policy. So people were put into groups. Now it also, later on, since the 90s onwards, that's the third bullet point that I'm at now, they say, well, there are also some issues that cannot be solved like this. People started believing that there are some things about Dutch society that people really need to learn. They're so basic to our Dutch society that people need to know in order to integrate, to participate, to join the Dutch culture. And instead of emancipation, we started talking about integration. So no more living apart together, no, but really living together, participating. And this mainly started because some politicians started thinking that there are some cultures that are really conflicting with Dutch culture. Now, and nowadays, this has you can say that the policies have become less liberal, or less tolerant. People started saying more and more, no, we cannot accept everything. There are certain things that everybody who lives in the Netherlands has to know. And of course, 9/11 has been a major event where we all discovered how religion and in the media, of course, media has played a big role in this event. We found out that some people hold beliefs, and it could be Islamic, it could also be Christian, it could be many, not even religious, it could be a different kind of fundamentalist, where people have beliefs that are really conflicting with a democratic Western society or any democratic society. So, and again, and it's mainly because of the media, I believe that the discussion is only focusing now on Islam. If we think about integration now in the Netherlands, we think about multiculturalism, usually within no time the discussion will be about Islam. And one of the main, our friend here, Geert Wilders, he said that the headscarf of a Muslim woman is a symbol of repression and it should be eradicated. We should not allow it in Dutch society. And he said it is a symbol of repression. Now, according to many Muslim women after that, they said, no, it's not a symbol of repression, it is a symbol of freedom. I decide who gets to see my hair. I decide who gets to see my body. And they believe that is freedom. So freedom is not a very easy value. You can't say this is freedom, that is not freedom. Even freedom is something we need to discuss. So to sum this up, you can say on the one hand, sure, there are problems between Islamic culture and Dutch culture if we put these two things in boxes, right? We cannot say there is something completely Islamic and we cannot say there is something completely Dutch. But in general, yes, there are some tensions. There are some tensions between that, especially also if you think about schools, if you think about education. What do kids need to learn? How much discipline do children need to learn? In Dutch schools, Dutch societies, we have these issues that parents from Morocco, especially the fathers, they believe that children should be hit, that you can use physical corporal punishment, and that it is good for a kid to learn. Sometimes you should slap a kid and then the kid learns. Many Dutch teachers do not believe in this anymore. 50 years ago they did, but now they believe corporal punishment or slapping or hitting is not allowed and is wrong. So this is something of a, you could say, a conflict. This is just an example of what that could be. Of course, nowadays with IS and we have Moroccan kids going to Syria to fight there, is a similar example, right? Now, on the other hand, you can also observe that many Muslims and many immigrants in Dutch society are doing very well. They are really getting ahead in school, they're getting good marks, and they're getting good jobs. So they speak Dutch, so you can ask yourself, what is really the problem? Is Islam really a threat? And I'm not going to answer this for you. I want you to think about that. Do you believe that Islamic religion is really a threat, or is it maybe certain interpretations of Islam? Or but then what should we do with it? Can we forbid certain things from the Islamic religion? Okay, so now that's just the question I'm asking about Islam. Of course, multicultural society is about much more than just Islam. But the discussion nowadays is mostly about that. So that's why we're focusing on it. And to show that, well, the discussion should be actually about what are the central values. So on the one hand, I showed you in the beginning the different policies. And on the one hand, you could say that we went from relativism to universalism. Relativism says, okay, all cultures are equal, all cultures are should be respected, and you cannot say this culture is better than that culture. Universalism, on the other hand, says, no, some cultures are better. This is the best culture, and some cultures are wrong. And just, well, they should be changed. And if we think, for example, about George Bush, when he was invading Iraq or Afghanistan, with America, he was saying that democratic, free countries of the West are universally better than the other countries that we are invading. And we have to bring the freedom to other countries. That you can say that is universalism. I want to show you this model because I think it is about combining the two. It is about, on the one hand, we can say, yes, we can be relativist, and we have to be relativist about certain things. For example, about things that we can call mental programming. Things like customs, habits, and language is the question. Where should that belong? We can think about that. But customs and habits, things like what food do you like? How do you greet each other? Which customs, which holidays do you celebrate? Which feasts do you have? What do you like to do? Do you like to come on time for parties or not? Those daily customs and habits that are in our minds, in our mental programming. And we cannot be universalist about that. We cannot say that if you live in the Netherlands, you all have to celebrate Christmas. No, you cannot say that. That would be silly. But on the other hand, there are also central values to a certain country that we have to say are so central to this country that you have to accept them. Things like human rights or the law, the constitution. There are certain principles in our constitution that are so fundamental that we want everyone to accept them. Things like religious freedom, things like freedom of expression, freedom to voice your opinion. The human right is also the right to choose your own sexuality. And in Holland, homosexual couples have many rights. You can walk around in the street and you have the right to show that you're homosexual. And in the Netherlands, we believe that is such a central thing that everybody who comes here should respect that, should appreciate and respect that, tolerate that. Even if you do not agree with it, you have the right, also in the Netherlands, to think differently, to say, I don't believe in homosexuality, or I don't believe in the freedom of expression. But you still have to accept it. You have to tolerate it. You cannot play your own lawyer. So the question about multicultural society, according to me, should be about what belongs here and what belongs here. And that is the discussion we should have. And language, of course, yeah, I've put them in both boxes because it is the question. How much of the language do you really have to learn to be able to live in some country? Yeah, and Holland has placed a very high, reasonably high limit on language. The Dutch believe that you have to speak Dutch very well in able to participate and to integrate into society. Other people believe, no, what's wrong with having your own language? As long as you're happy, as long as you have a job and you can manage, there's no problem. Right? So that is one of the discussions we have been having for quite some time in this country. Now let me go to the next chapter. The next chapter is Law in Action, and again, we're talking here about liberalism. And there are a few things that I want to tell you about this. Liberalism deals with freedom, and Holland has seen itself as always a tolerant and liberal country, a country with as much freedom as possible. Now, you have already heard about the polder model, which is all about negotiation. Now, this chapter introduces a new thing. It's called gedoogbeleid, which means something like it is a policy where we officially something is illegal, but we do allow it. So we pretend it's not happening, basically. That's called gedoogbeleid. It's permissiveness, as you can see here. Right? So polder model is about negotiation, gedoogbeleid is about permissiveness. So we permit it. And it is very central to how we practice law in the Netherlands. So there's a lot of space always for negotiation, which happens in court. And we are especially permissive, so we're especially liberal and have gedoogbeleid towards crimes without victims. Crimes, that means habits or conducts that are officially wrong and officially illegal, but since there are no victims, since no one is really suffering from it, we permit them, except for the person himself, maybe. That is a question. And the most famous examples are, of course, these. In Amsterdam, we have the red light district, which is, in many countries, prostitution is illegal. And here, officially, it's not legal, but we allow it. We say, okay, there are not many real victims because of this, right? People are obviously enjoying it as well. And as long as the women, the prostitutes, are safe and they're not being trafficked by criminals and they're doing it out of their own choice, then they're doing it to themselves. And if they want to do it, it's fine. Who are we to say that it's wrong? So you could say that prostitution in that way is a crime without a victim. Now, soft drugs, of course, you have probably already discovered, being in the Netherlands, is, you could say, a crime without a victim, right? So the only one who is maybe suffering from it is the person who smokes himself. So officially, growing marijuana is illegal. It's not allowed. But the police is not too much enforcing it. They're understanding that the coffee shops also need their supply, and the people who want to smoke, they need to be able to buy it. So it is legal to buy it. It is legal to buy a few grams, but it is illegal for the coffee shops to grow it and to buy it themselves. So that is a very double strange thing in the Dutch law. So, and again, you could say a crime without a victim. Well, another one here is euthanasia, ending your life before the end. So ending your life yourself, euthanasia. In many countries, this is a highly illegal thing. No doctor is allowed to help with ending the life of a patient. Now in Holland, there are more it's more liberal nowadays. We're saying if someone suffers so much that they do not want to live anymore, they have the right to end their own life. There are no victims in that way. No, someone is actually helped by it. Of course, I'm saying it very black and white. There are always discussions about it. But since there's not a victim with this crime, you should allow it, permit it. Now, I'd like to reflect. We've been discussing I've shown you the central values and the mental programming, that pyramid. I would like you to reflect on what do you think, which values, practices, and rules should everyone in your country accept? So also newcomers from other countries. What do you think is so fundamental? Like for example, I was explaining sexual freedom or freedom of speech, freedom of expression. What do you think in your country is so central and so important that everybody should accept it? I would like you to think about that, because that is what we have to think about if we think about multicultural society. That is the question we should ask ourselves. Take some time to think about that, and that will also help you in your exam. Okay, well, we could make a few possible conclusions about the two chapters. So the two chapters are in a way about tolerance. And what is interesting to understand that there is a difference between law and morality. The law tells us what is right and wrong, but morality also tells us what is right and wrong. Morality is what we have in our minds, that our own ideas about what is right and wrong. And that's not always the same as the law. So the law says one thing, but morality, the general morality, might say something else. And because of morality, because of this, laws also keep changing, right? That's important to understand. So if the whole society believes that, wait a minute, homosexuality, for example, is a very normal thing, then the law should change. Especially in a democracy, this happens. Right? That is an important thing to remember about this. Then, if it's about tolerance, that doesn't mean, like I said, we have to accept everything. We do not have to tolerate intolerance. When people are becoming intolerant towards other people, when people start not accepting other people, we do not have to tolerate that, right? So we can't say, no, this is not allowed. You have to accept certain differences. And a third thing about the multicultural society is that it is very difficult to identify groups as the problem. We have experienced in the Netherlands that this is probably not the solution. It will not help to say, this is a problem with the Muslims. This is a problem with the Turkish. This is a problem with the Moroccans. This is the Surinamese. Because still in the Netherlands, we think of people too much in those groups. And a possible solution could be more to think about individuals. Like, what should every individual person accept in the Netherlands? What should that individual know and learn and do, instead of identifying groups? Because groups are so different in themselves, right? So these are just some general ideas. Now to prepare for your exam, well, of course, read the two chapters, read them carefully, and especially think about these four topics. The history of the integration multicultural policy that I've just explained in one of the slides. Know these different steps, understand that. And I also want you to think about what we've discussed, Islam. Is that a threat or not? In what way can you perceive Islam as a threat, and in which way can you not? What are the different views about this? I want you to understand those different views and understand what are crimes without victims and how does this relate to the word gedoogbeleid, the permissiveness. Understand these topics especially well. because they might come up in the exam a little more in detail. And I will definitely also ask you more about your own ideas. I've asked you to reflect a couple of minutes. So especially reflect on these topics. What do you think is a good integration policy? What would work? And what is your idea about Islam? And then you think, of course, about what are central values in a country and what are not. And how do you feel about crimes without victims? Do you think it's okay to legalize soft drugs? Do you think it's okay to legalize euthanasia? Maybe yes, maybe no. And give your own arguments. Yeah, so you can give your own opinion. You can disagree. That's fine. But give your own right arguments. That's what we will look at. All right, thank you very much. And please, if you have any questions about this class or this lecture or about something in the book, feel free to just email me at this email address, m.bos, and this is a stripe, sorry, at windesheim.nl. Yeah? Feel free to mail me and I'll try to answer you as soon as possible. Take care and all the best.